Hi guys, welcome to our next video. I'm from the Salesforce Dealers team, and in today's session we're going to continue off from the last video that we did, that was introduction to integration in Salesforce for both REST and SOAP endpoints. Today we're going to move further and take a look at how to do REST integration in Salesforce, and that includes both consuming and exposing APIs. So for references, anything that you want to check out, you can go to our site, and then you should be able to find everything below this REST integration in Salesforce topic. All right. Okay. So for a brief introduction, in the last session, we determined that REST APIs work off an endpoint, an HTTP body, and a method. So before we actually implement it out in Salesforce, I'm going to let you guys know a really common way, a quick way to test out your REST APIs before you actually implement it in Salesforce. And to test that out is using a tool called Postman. So as you can see right here, this is the Postman tool that I have installed on my system. You should be able to install it in Linux, Windows, or any other systems that you have. Now, once you install this Postman tool in your system, you can use lots of testing websites, various websites there are which provide you testing REST APIs, so that you just know how to call a REST API. So one of these websites is this reqres.in. It is a website just used for testing any REST APIs. So it provides sample REST APIs like these, which allow you to call them from your Postman or any other tool. So basically, we're going to take a look at the example right here. So if I click on the request, when I click on this request right here, it says API users or page 2. Don't take this, there's no meaning behind it. This is just a sample API. So this right here that you see is the endpoint that we need to use. So this is one of the three things that are required for the REST API. So this endpoint, I'm going to copy it. Then once I install Postman, I can create a new request and it'll ask you all the details needed for the REST APIs. So in here, it says enter REST request URL. So this is where you will send the endpoint from. Then this is a GET request. If I go back here, it is listed right here in the GET request. So I need to keep the method as GET here. And then I just need to send this out from my Postman. So when I send this out, you see it returned me this response. So this is how we are able to test out REST APIs from Postman. A quick thing of note here is, so this response that you see here, this format that you see, this is called the Json format. It works with these curly braces and using these double quotes identifiers. This is one of the most commonly used data formats in REST APIs. So similarly, you can also use any post example here. So this is like an example of post, right? So I'm just going to copy the endpoint for this. Now, when I change the request from get to post, you'll see that you're also able to specify a body here, right? From here, this tag. And in this example, these guys, if I go back to the post example, this is the body that they are sending. Just for again example purpose. Isn't this body also format the JSON data format? So I'm just going to copy this body, put it here, and then you'll see under the options here from draw, you can select JSON here. And now it is set up in the actual JSON format. And now you can send this out. You'll see that we got the response back for the post as well. So similarly, you can use any REST APIs or any REST APIs from your Postman before you guys actually implement it out in Salesforce. Now, moving onwards, there's all the instructions to use the Postman are here. You guys can use that. Now moving forward to the next thing regarding integration. So since we just saw that in the Postman, we need to specify the endpoint and the body and everything else for us to like hit the API, right? So let's try and now hit this same API from our Salesforce. So as I told you guys in the last session, so the first thing you need to do is you need to set up the remote site first before we actually make a call out to the server. Since if we don't do that, we'll see an error. So let me click on the remote site and let's just put in a test remote site. I'm gonna put the URL in here, whatever URL we have. So it's just gonna like store the base URL when I save this. So as you can see, it just stores this http reqres.in SQL. Now I'm gonna open the developer console. Let's open this in a new tab. Okay, and in here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open the anonymous window. And now here is the fun part. So if you want to consume REST APIs from inside your Salesforce, so if I go back to our website, you can use this HTTP request class. This is an inbuilt standard class inside of Salesforce which allows you to consume any REST APIs. So we're gonna use this class and we're gonna create a request first. This is the request that you're gonna be sending out. So obviously you need to specify all the REST API things here. So the first thing you'll need to specify is the endpoint. And again, let's say we're gonna just use the get request for now. Let's just use the get request first. You can use this req.set endpoint method, and just I'm gonna copy the endpoint from here. Like this. Then we need to set the method, HTTP method here as well, which is get. Now the third thing is body, but in the get request you don't need to send any body, so we're not going to specify that. Then the next thing you need to do is define an instance of the HTTP object. And then lastly, you're going to define an HTTP response like this. Then you're going to do http.send, and you're going to use this req here like this. And once you do this, so whatever response you get back will be stored in this HTTP response object. Then you can access a lot of things from the HTTP response object. So for now, let me just print out the body from this object. Now I'm gonna execute this line of code and execute it. Okay, I made one mistake, so let me just correct that. So we just executed that piece of code, and if we check the debug, you'll see that we get this actual JSON response in our debug as well. So we are able to hit this endpoint from inside of Salesforce, and you're able to consume this this endpoint from inside of Salesforce. Similarly, you can also use a post request here and use whatever endpoint we had in this post request right here. And then you can also set the body in here like this body. I'm just gonna like convert it properly like this. This is an easy hack you can do, guys. So I'm just putting the body in here. And one more thing, if you notice, is since we set the body type as JSON, right? So actually, if you go to the small headers tab right here, let me check, you'll see, click on this function right here. So you'll see that Postman set up this content type header automatically for us, but inside from Salesforce, you'll need to set this manually to application/JSON so that the endpoint behaves in a way and it considers the body that we send as a JSON object. So setting this header is also very easy. You just need to do request.set header. In here goes what header it is, and the second thing is what value that header has, like this. Now I'm gonna again send this out. So as you can see, we were also able to get the post request to work by using the post method. Now, this HTTP request, there is a lot of documentation for it in the Salesforce documents, and also we have examples regarding this in our website right here. So you can check out these examples, how to do this, and you should be able to call to any REST APIs that you want. There are like more detailed things to look out for here, like handling the response codes and stuff like that. But that is out of the scope of this session. So we're just gonna have this basic introduction of how to do REST integration. All right. Now, the second thing to do in REST APIs is exposing your REST APIs to be used from other third parties. Like, so right now we were calling the REST API of this website from Salesforce. We were consuming it. But now what we want is we should be able to call the APIs that we define in our system from other third party tools. So since we should be able to do is we should be able to define a REST API in our system and then be able to call that REST API in our system from this Postman tool. So essentially outside of Salesforce. So a really quick thing that you guys need to keep in mind is, the first thing that, we can expose any REST APIs from our system, but in order to call that REST API from our system, any third party would need to do an authentication. Like this website that we just consumed, this is a testing website, so this does not require any authentication. Why does Salesforce require authentication? So let's say you create an API in your Salesforce which will return to you all the accounts that you have in your org. So we only want specific users or secure users to be able to call this. We don't want that this should be available to everyone. That is why Salesforce follows an authentication process. So how does that authentication process works? So if you want to expose your APIs to any third-party systems, you need to create what we call a connected app. You can again find all the documentation regarding this on our website. So if I go back to my org, go to apps, click on this app section, scroll down here. So I already have one of the connected apps created, but I'm going to create a new one. So I click on new. I need to say demo. Just name it anything. contact email, we're just gonna put at salesforce.drillers.com. And in here you need to enable this checkbox called enable auth settings. In the callback URL you can put any URL for now. It is, just put anything, just put Google. And then in the in the auth scopes, this like defines what level of access a person would have when they log in to, authenticate with our Salesforce org using this connected app. For now, you can like give all the access, but if you want, you can give specific access for all of these things as well. So leave the rest of these things as it is. Click on save. It'll say that allow from 2 to 10 minutes for this to take effect. So I'm just gonna do that, and then we're gonna like reconnect. Oh, I think I need to put in HTTPS here in the callback URL. Yeah, so let us activate this. So once this is created, you'll see that we have a consumer key, a consumer secret here. All right, and we have this full access here. So you can use this, and then you should be able to log in to this org or authenticate to this org. How do we do that? I'll show you guys as soon as this connected app is activated. Hi guys, so our connected app has now been activated, and we're gonna resume where we left off. So basically, once you have created this connected app, you need to provide the consumer key, this from this whole key and the secret from here to your third party provider who is going to consume your APIs from Salesforce. So apart from the consumer key and consumer secret, that person also needs your username and password. Once he has all of these 4 things, this is again our Postman, and I set up a request here and I ran it. I'm not gonna like show you guys my username and password because of the privacy reasons, but what you need to do is, since we are authenticating or securing our connection with a developer org, we use this endpoint with the login. And this endpoint is https login salesforce/services/auth2/token. On this endpoint, you need to provide all of these parameters in the body. So in this case, the body type is not your raw and JSON. The body type is actually XWWW form URL encoded. So select that. Then you need to give grant type, which is always going to be password. Then your client ID, which is going to be this ID. Then your client secret, which is going to be this consumer secret. Then your username, which is your Salesforce username. And then your password, which is your Salesforce password. So once you provide all of this here and send it out, you'll receive this response if you are successful, which will give you this access token. So this access token then gives us the ability to call any custom APIs in our org as well. All right. So do keep this in mind, but this is how authentication works. The main purpose is to get this access token. Now, once you are done with that, we're going to come back to the Apex, and I'm going to come back to the website. Again, all of these options like setting up the connected app and everything and getting this request, all of this is also mentioned on our website here. So you guys can always check that out. But the next step on this would be, if you want to use any of the APIs or like define custom APIs, you need to use this REST resource notation right here, which will let you like define any custom APIs in your Salesforce org. So let's move forward by creating a REST resource type class in our org. So I'm going to go to my developer console, going to close all this, go to new Apex class, and let's name it my demo custom API. So once this class has been defined, first you need to change it to global, since global modifier is required when you want to expose this class to outside of your org, right? So you do that, then you need to add the resource notation on here, URL mapping. So you'll see even in the example on our website that there is one URL mapping here. So how does this URL mapping work? So I'll show you guys in a minute. But for now, you just need to put in URL mapping and then custom API or anything. Star operator works here, so you can also give a star operator here. It works the same way like in your text and everything. So it will like allow you to add anything after this as well. So you do this and we say this out. So like this. Once this class is defined, so you can create methods in here to be exposed in the form of a get method or a post method. So what I mean by that is, if I go back to the example on the website, so we have this example right here, and I'm just gonna show you how it works. So you'll see the first method defined here is this get accounts method, and this method is exposed by a get HTTP method. Similarly, the second method defined here is the post method, which is saved by a I think an issue here is list of account. Yes, and list of account here, sir. And here also list of account is only saved. So now what happens is this first method, the get account method, this is bound to a get HTTP method. And also this URL mapping that we just defined here, this is what gives us the REST endpoint. So basically we got all the things that we need to call a REST API. So now what we'll do is we need to go to Postman. I'm going to create a new request and I'm going to try and call this get method. So since this is a get, you'll say get here. In the endpoint, copy the base URL of your org. Okay, so base URL goes from your Salesforce org. Then after this, you need to open services dash apex rest. And after the slash, you need to copy whatever URL mapping you gave here, like this. And now the last thing you need to do is that step about the authentication that we talked about. Okay, so now what you need to do to fix the authorization part is go to your request in here, add a header here called authorization, like this in the headers. Then for the value of this, you need to add bearer, then a space, then go back to the first request that we made, which gave you this access token right here. Copy this access token and put it right here. Now when I send this request out like this, so you see I got all the account records in my org right here, because that is how this get method was working here. It was returning me the accounts. Now let's see how we call the post method. It is very similar. I mean, you have to do the authorization step for every method, be it get or post. So just change the method here to post, since the API endpoint is the same, custom API. Now, if you take a look at this post method, the input being passed here is this input wrapper type, which has two variables, the CC ID and the name. So let's do one thing. Let's copy this name here. What you'll need to do is we'll need to go to body, and this right here accepts input in JSON. So in the body to type raw and choose JSON from here. And here you need to define a JSON body with these two parameters, ACC ID. So just put it like this. Just put it blank, and the name right here. And I'm gonna put the name as the one that we got in the last surveys. Let's say this one, Lincoln Textile Corps of America. Then when I send this API out, so you'll see, oh, okay. So I think what I need to do is I need to change this JSON right here. Let me fix this. Okay, so the mistake that we made was we need to have the JSON body in this format actually. And the reason behind that is, so the variable that you see here, the variable name is called wrap. You need to have this wrap as the variable name here. Then inside this wrap, this input wrapper, you have these two further inputs like the ACC ID and the name. So now when I like put this in this way and send it out, so you'll see it returns me the actual account record. So the important takeaway from this is you need to keep in mind that there is a step for the authorization step right here, and you have to get this access token first before you can actually consume any custom APIs, or anybody else can consume any custom APIs in your Salesforce. So alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope this gave you a little brief overview of how REST API consumption and exposure works in Salesforce. And I see you guys in the next session.